There's a quiet, piercing moment when you realize you've been here before. You catch yourself in the aftermath of yet another familiar mistake, the same kind of blunder you swore you'd never repeat. Perhaps you're sending a contrite email about a missed deadline again, or picking up the pieces of a broken relationship that feels eerily similar to the last. In that moment, a wave of frustration and déjà vu washes over you. Not again, you think. How is it possible to fall into the same trap when you knew how much it hurt last time? It's almost as if life put you on repeat without your consent. Each recurrence chips away at your confidence, and you quietly wonder, what's wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? You're far from alone in this experience. Many of us live through these repetitive loops, reliving old mistakes like a movie stuck on replay. We promise ourselves never again, only to find that promise broken with a familiar sense of guilt and disappointment. It can feel maddening. In fact, there's a famous adage often attributed to Albert Einstein: insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. By that definition, being caught in this cycle of repeating mistakes can genuinely feel a bit like insanity. You might even start to doubt your ability to change, suspecting some hidden force is sabotaging your efforts. So why does this happen? Are we just hopelessly stubborn or slow to learn? Is there some flawed part of our psyche that enjoys the pain of our own errors? The truth is both reassuring and eye-opening. You are not broken or doomed to fail. There are concrete, identifiable reasons why people keep making the same mistakes. Psychology, neuroscience, and even philosophy have shed light on this frustrating human tendency. Once you understand what's really going on beneath the surface, you can begin to break free of the loop. In this exploration, we'll dive deep into the 5 major reasons we repeat our mistakes. We'll uncover the hidden habits of the brain, the emotional echoes of our past, the invisible fence of our comfort zone, the traps set by our environment, and the blind spots that cloud our self-awareness. More importantly, for each of these reasons, we'll discuss how to turn things around, how to learn the lesson, and finally move forward. By the end of this journey, you'll not only understand why you've been caught in a cycle, you'll also have a roadmap to climb out of it. If you're tired of stumbling over the same stone, if you're ready to turn your painful repeats into catalysts for growth, then take a deep breath. This is your moment to break the cycle. Let's begin the transformation from feeling trapped and frustrated to feeling empowered and in control of your path. After all, every mistake repeated is a lesson unlearned, and it's never too late to learn.
Reason 1. We are creatures of habit. The power of autopilot. One of the biggest reasons we keep making the same mistakes is simply because we are creatures of habit. Human brains are wonderfully efficient, but that efficiency comes at a cost. Once we've done something a certain way, we tend to keep doing it that way. The behavior might be harmful or unhelpful, but if it's the familiar path, our brain's autopilot will steer us there again and again. Habits form because they save mental energy. Our brains love to create shortcuts, well-worn neural pathways, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we face a routine task or decision. Think about your morning routine. You likely follow the same sequence without even thinking. This is fine for harmless routines like brushing your teeth or commuting to work. But what happens when the routine is something that undermines you, like procrastinating on important tasks or reacting with anger when you feel criticized? Once that behavior becomes a default response, it turns into a habit loop. You might know better on a logical level, but your autopilot kicks in before your rational brain can intervene. Consider procrastination as an example. Let's say every time you feel stressed about a project, you instinctively distract yourself by scrolling through your phone or watching videos. Initially, you do this to get a short break and ease your anxiety. It's a quick relief. But if you repeat that response each time stress comes up, Over time, it solidifies into a habitual pattern. The next time you face a big task, you almost automatically find yourself avoiding it.
You didn't consciously decide, I'm going to repeat my mistake of procrastinating. But here you are again, pulling an all-nighter and vowing never again in the morning. This is the power of habit at work. Each repetition strengthened that neural pathway, making the behavior more automatic. Our brains have essentially trained themselves to stick with what's easy and known. Psychologists note that humans aren't as rational as we'd like to think. We tend to take the path of least resistance. Doing something new or exerting willpower is cognitively taxing, whereas doing what we've always done is mentally efficient. In a way, your brain is trying to help you by conserving energy, but it can inadvertently keep you stuck in a loop of repeating mistakes. It's like water flowing down a hill. It will follow the established channels it carved in the past rather than spontaneously choose a new route. Unless we deliberately redirect it, water will keep eroding the same stream bed. Similarly, unless we actively intervene, our thoughts and actions will flow down the same mental grooves, even if those grooves lead to a cliff. There's also a familiarity bias at play. We tend to prefer things that we've done before simply because they're familiar. The first time you make a certain mistake, it's usually by accident or ignorance. The second or third time, strangely, it might be because it's familiar. There's comfort in the known, even when the known is bad for us. Our brain might treat the mistake as the correct route simply because it's been taken before. In one sense, we learn from experience, but sometimes what we learn is the wrong lesson. For example, if someone grew up handling conflict by yelling, because that's what they observed in their family, yelling becomes their learned solution to disagreements. Even if it harms their relationships, it feels natural to them because it's the script their brain memorized. To do something different, like calmly discussing the issue, would feel unfamiliar, perhaps even wrong or uncomfortable, so they slip back into the old habit of shouting and later regret it.
Breaking out of habit loops requires conscious effort and awareness. The first step is recognizing that a particular behavior is indeed a habit, an automatic reflex rather than a deliberate choice. Pay attention to your routines, especially around the mistakes you commonly make. Do they follow a pattern? Is there a trigger that sets you on autopilot? You might notice, for instance, that every afternoon you reach for a sugary snack and then feel guilty for breaking your diet. Repeat mistake. Perhaps the trigger is that you always crash in energy around that time and your brain has been conditioned to seek a quick boost from sugar. Once you identify such a pattern, you can start to interrupt it. It can help to create a small pause between trigger and action. When you feel the urge to do the familiar thing that you know ends badly, take a breath and acknowledge what's happening. I'm feeling stressed, and this is when I usually insert habit, example, avoid the task or reach for junk food. My brain is looking for the easy way out. That moment of mindful recognition, even if it's just a few seconds, cracks the autopilot and puts you back in the driver's seat. Now you have a chance to steer in a different direction. Maybe you stand up and stretch, or take a short walk, or set a 5-minute timer to start the task you're avoiding. Anything to break the old cue response pattern.
Remember, habits aren't destiny. They're simply learned patterns. And anything learned can be unlearned or relearned with patience. It might feel uncomfortable at first because new neural pathways take time and effort to build. But with each deliberate choice, you're carving out a fresh channel for your behavior. Over time, that new channel can become the default, and the old habit will weaken from disuse.
In other words, you can teach your brain new tricks. It's not easy to overcome our creature of habit nature, but it is entirely possible. Every time you choose to act differently in a familiar situation, you're proving that you do have control, that the cycle can be broken. In essence, one key reason we repeat mistakes is that our brain likes to stick to what it knows. But acknowledging this is empowering. It means when you fall into an old mistake, it's not because you're doomed or foolish. It might just be your brain following an old script. And scripts can be rewritten. Through awareness and practice, you can break those automatic patterns. You can turn "I always mess up like this" into "this time I'm going to try a different response." Bit by bit, mistake by mistake, you step off of autopilot and regain control of the wheel. Sometimes we repeat the same mistakes not because of habit or lack of willpower, but because something deep inside us is pulling the strings. Our past experiences, especially the painful or formative ones from childhood, can create emotional patterns that we unknowingly reenact in our adult lives. It's as if we carry around an invisible script written years ago, and we keep casting ourselves in the same tragic play without realizing it. In psychology, this is often referred to as repetition compulsion or unresolved emotional patterns. In simpler terms, we repeat what we haven't repaired. Consider a person who repeatedly ends up in relationships where they feel abandoned or unvalued, no matter who they date. On the surface, it might seem like terrible luck or a string of bad partners. But if we look deeper, we might find a familiar thread going back to childhood. Perhaps this person had a parent who was emotionally distant or left the family. That early wound of abandonment became an unresolved emotional theme. Now, as an adult, they might unconsciously be drawn to partners who are incapable of commitment, thus recreating the scenario that left them hurt long ago. Why on earth would someone do this to themselves? It's not intentional. It's the mind's perplexing way of trying to resolve the issue. If they can get someone similar to that parent to finally love them properly, it would heal the old wound. Or so the unconscious logic goes. In reality, they just end up reliving the hurt over and over because they're drawn to what is familiar, even if it's painful.
Sigmund Freud, the famous psychoanalyst, observed this phenomenon over a century ago. He noticed that some people lived out patterns that made them suffer, as if compelled by a force beyond their awareness. Freud called it a demonic compulsion to repeat, using the term demonic to illustrate how powerfully and mysteriously these patterns grip us. He gave examples. One person keeps finding friends who eventually betray him, no matter how kind he is. Another repeatedly sabotages any mentor or authority figure he admires. Another has each romantic relationship end the same heartbreaking way. To an outside observer, it almost looks like fate or a curse. But Freud pointed out that these individuals were unwittingly arranging their own fate by reenacting old experiences. In a haunting line, he noted that these people seem pursued by a relentless fate, though closer investigation teaches us that they are unwittingly bringing this fate on themselves. In other words, the script comes from inside, from unresolved emotions, and not from an external curse at all.
Carl Jung, another pioneering psychologist, offered a complementary insight. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What remains unresolved or unconscious within us, our buried fears, needs, and hurts, will continue to influence our choices from the shadows. We'll keep stumbling into the same scenarios, and we won't know why, chalking it up to bad luck or fate.
It's like having a hidden puppet master in your psyche. For you to break free, you have to shine a light on those hidden strings. You need to identify what emotional wound or unmet need is causing you to repeat certain mistakes.
Unresolved emotional patterns aren't always as dramatic as childhood trauma, but they are often rooted in our early learning about ourselves and the world. Maybe as a child, you learned that making mistakes meant you're a failure. Perhaps you had very critical parents or teachers. That harsh internalized lesson could lead you, as an adult, to fear failure so much that you end up avoiding challenges or sabotaging opportunities, because, ironically, not trying at all feels safer than trying and failing. Thus, you keep repeating the mistake of not pursuing your goals. The root cause isn't laziness. It's a deep-seated belief born from emotional experiences long ago. Another example. Imagine someone who, as a child, only got attention when they were in distress. They fell and got hurt, and the family swooped in. Or they were ill and finally felt cared for. This person might grow up and unconsciously create crises or dramas in their life, repeating the mistake of, say, neglecting responsibilities until there's a huge problem, or stirring up conflict without wanting to. Part of them might be seeking that rush of concern or help from others that they learned to associate with being valued. Of course, this usually backfires. In adulthood, constant crises just push people away or cause chaos. The person is left asking, why do things always blow up in my face over and over? The answer may lie in that childhood script that equated crisis with care.
So how do we break these deep emotional cycles? The key is healing and awareness. We must confront those old wounds and unmet needs instead of unconsciously replaying them. This often means doing some introspective work, and sometimes it means seeking support through therapy or counseling. Talking to a professional can provide a safe space to uncover patterns you might not see on your own. Through reflection, you might discover, I have a pattern of choosing emotionally unavailable partners because deep down, I'm replaying my relationship with my emotionally unavailable father. That realization is powerful. It's like finding a hidden piece of the puzzle of your life. Once you see it, you can start doing something about it. Healing unresolved emotions could involve forgiving someone who hurt you or forgiving yourself. It might involve learning healthy ways to meet the needs that weren't met in the past. For example, building self-worth from within rather than chasing validation from others. It definitely involves treating the current situation not as a literal repeat of the past, but as a new scenario where you have more knowledge and strength. You can tell yourself, yes, that happened to me before, but it doesn't have to happen again. I'm not a helpless child now. I can make different choices. In practical terms, breaking the cycle might mean pushing yourself to do the opposite of your instinct in certain situations. If your pattern is to run after people who pull away from you, your new approach might be to pause and not chase, to let them go and see that you'll be okay, thereby healing that fear of abandonment. If your pattern is self-sabotage whenever you get a taste of success, because deep down you feel you don't deserve happiness, an emotional scar from childhood, your new approach is to acknowledge that feeling, but still allow yourself to progress, even if it feels uncomfortable. Remember the saying, we repeat what we don't repair. Every repeated mistake is pointing to something that needs healing. Rather than viewing it as just failure, view it as an opportunity to address a deeper issue. It's as if life will keep giving you the same lesson over and over until you learn it. This isn't to blame you for your own hurt. Much of these patterns were set in motion by things outside your control when you were young. But as an adult, reclaiming control starts with recognizing the pattern and the pain fueling it. When you do the inner work, when you repair that broken part of your heart or psyche, you'll find that you're no longer compelled to relive the same story. The invisible strings untie, the old script loses its grip, and you're free to write a new story that isn't dictated by the past.
Reason 3. Fear of change and the comfort of familiarity. If habits and past wounds often keep us repeating mistakes, there's another big culprit to address: our fear of change. As humans, we have a complicated relationship with change. We crave improvement, yet we cling to the familiar. We might be miserable in a certain situation, but at least it's predictable, and that weirdly can feel safer than stepping into the unknown. This is why so many of us stay stuck in loops. The devil we know seems less frightening than the devil we don't. The result? We stay in jobs, relationships, or habits that make us unhappy, repeating the same problems because leaving our comfort zone is terrifying. Think about a mistake you've repeated and ask yourself, was there a point where doing something different felt too scary, so you fell back into old ways? For example, suppose you keep dating the same type of incompatible person. Changing that pattern might mean being alone for a while, or it might mean seeking out a very different kind of partner, which could challenge you to grow. Both prospects can be scary if you're used to a certain dynamic. So you stick with what you know, and history repeats itself. Or consider someone who keeps getting in trouble at work for procrastinating. The obvious change would be to overhaul their time management and work habits, but that might require uncomfortable adjustments, stricter routines, maybe admitting to others or themselves that they need help organizing. The comfort of their familiar, if flawed, work style wins out, and the cycle continues with each blown deadline or chaotic rush. Why do we fear change so much, even when our current situation isn't good? On a biological level, our brains interpret change as a potential threat. Deep in our psychology, predictability equals safety. Our ancestors survived by knowing which berries were safe, which paths led to shelter. The unknown could be dangerous. That ancient wiring is still in us. When faced with a big change, the limbic system, the brain's threat detection center, can flare up, flooding us with anxiety. Even if we logically understand that, say, switching careers could make us happier, our emotional brain might scream, "But what if it's worse? What if I fail? Stay where you are. At least we know how to handle this." This survival instinct favors the status quo, even if the status quo is suboptimal. Fyodor Dostoevsky, the great Russian novelist, wrote, "Taking a new step, uttering a new word is what people fear most." He captured how any step into true newness, doing something we've never done, being someone we've never been, is profoundly intimidating. It's ironic because staying the same when it's harmful leads to suffering, yet we often prefer that over uncertainty. There's even a phrase, comfortable misery, to describe how we sometimes settle into discomfort because it's at least familiar discomfort. A poignant example is someone staying in a toxic relationship. To outsiders, it's obvious they're unhappy and deserve better. But to the person, the idea of leaving and being alone, or the idea of learning to love in a different way with someone new, is daunting. They know how this current dysfunctional dance steps. They don't know what a new dance might entail. So they endure the current pain, repeating the same fights and heartbreaks, because at least it's a script they recognize. Another common scenario, fear of change can lead to self-sabotage. You might be on the verge of breaking a pattern. Say you've been exercising regularly for a month, breaking the old mistake of a sedentary lifestyle, and then suddenly you stop. Or you get a promotion at work and then start underperforming. Why? It's not that you want to fail, but success or change can feel disorienting if you're not used to it. A
A part of you might actually be uncomfortable with the unfamiliar success, so you unconsciously revert to what feels normal, which, sadly, might be the previous state of struggle. It's a twisted logic. Failing in a familiar way can feel less scary than risking the unfamiliar territory of success or health. Overcoming fear of change starts with acknowledging it openly. There's no shame in feeling afraid of new things. It's a very human response. Tell yourself the truth. I am afraid of what will happen if I change this. Identify exactly what your fear is. Is it fear of failure, fear of success, fear of losing part of your identity or relationships if you change? Sometimes just naming it takes away some of its power because you bring it from that vague emotional fog into the light of reason. Next, gently remind yourself why change is necessary. Paint a vivid picture of what staying the same will cost you. Yes, change is scary, but how scary is the idea of being stuck in this same mistake 5 or 10 years from now? For example, if you keep avoiding difficult conversations to avoid change, imagine the accumulation of misunderstandings and resentment in a decade. That's pretty frightening in its own right. Contrast that with the image of a better outcome if you take the leap. If you face your procrastination habit now and adopt new strategies, imagine a year from now being less stressed and more successful. If you break the cycle of dating toxic people, imagine eventually finding a healthy, supportive relationship. These visions of why you want change can inspire courage.
Another technique is to take baby steps. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. That's often too overwhelming. And indeed, our fear of change loves to convince us that change means some gigantic, impossible leap. Instead, focus on one small change at a time. If you're afraid of leaving a stable but unfulfilling job, maybe start by exploring options or hobbies on the side, rather than quitting tomorrow. If you fear being alone, practice enjoying small doses of solitude. Take yourself out for a coffee and notice that the sky doesn't fall in. Each small, successful step into the unknown expands your comfort zone gradually. You start gathering proof that new doesn't necessarily equal disaster. It's also helpful to reframe the idea of change. Change isn't about losing who you are, it's about growing into who you're meant to be. Try viewing change as an adventure or a learning experience rather than a threat. In fact, change is the only way we break free from repeating the past. If nothing changes, nothing changes. We'll keep getting the same outcome. Remind yourself that change brought you every good thing you now cherish. After all, at one point, everything in your life was new. Every friend was once a stranger. Every skill you have was once something you couldn't do. This perspective can make change feel less like a plunge into darkness and more like stepping into a brighter, open space. Lastly, consider the cost of inaction versus the cost of action. Yes, action, change, has a cost: effort, uncertainty, maybe temporary discomfort. But inaction has a cost too: the cost of stagnation, regret, and repeated pain. Often when we weigh them honestly, we find that staying stuck hurts more over time than the short-term discomfort of changing. When you truly internalize that, it fuels your motivation to push through the fear. In summary, fear of change is a powerful force that can chain us to our mistakes. It wraps us in a false sense of security, whispering that at least we know how this will go. But if how this will go is nowhere good, we have to challenge that fear. By acknowledging the fear, taking gradual steps, and focusing on the positive possibilities ahead, we loosen its grip. You have to remind yourself that the pain of staying the same often outweighs the pain of change. Yes, stepping out of your comfort zone is hard, but nothing truly great happens inside that zone. Every meaningful improvement in life, every break in a negative cycle, comes when we dare to do something different. As the saying goes, if you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. It's time to trade the comfort of familiar misery for the risk of something new.
9 times out of 10, you'll find that something new leads not to doom, but to growth and freedom from the old pattern.
Reason 4. Immediate rewards and environmental traps. Even when we consciously want to change and break out of a cycle, our environment and the lure of immediate gratification can pull us right back in. Many of the mistakes we repeat come with short-term rewards or relief that make them hard to resist in the moment, even though they hurt us in the long run. Furthermore, the people and cues around us might be reinforcing our bad habits without us even realizing it. To put it simply, it's hard to change your trajectory when you're surrounded by the same cues, temptations, and feedback loops that got you in trouble before. Human behavior is significantly influenced by reward and reinforcement. If a behavior, even a mistake, gives us some kind of payoff right now, we are likely to do it again. Our brains are wired to prioritize immediate outcomes, thanks to a bias psychologists call immediacy effect, or simply our tendency toward instant gratification. The future consequences, however severe, often don't feel real or pressing in the heat of the moment. This is why someone can sincerely intend to break a bad habit, yet give in just one more time. In that instant, the promise of immediate pleasure or relief outweighs the distant promise of improvement. Take, for example, someone trying to quit smoking. They know all the logical reasons to stop: health, money, etc. They might even remember the last time they'd quit for a month and how much better they felt. But right now, stress hits, or a friend offers a cigarette, and the immediate relief of nicotine and the familiar ritual calls out. The long-term goal fades from the forefront of their mind. They light up thinking, just this once. But of course it isn't just once. The cycle starts anew. The brain effectively got a reward, reduced stress, a little dopamine hit, for the mistake of smoking again, thereby reinforcing that behavior. Next time stress comes, guess what the brain will push them to do? The same thing.
This doesn't apply only to substance habits. It applies to a broad range of repeated mistakes. If you often explode in anger at loved ones and later regret it, consider that in the moment of anger, raising your voice or lashing out might give a feeling of release or dominance, a short-lived reward that reinforces the aggressive response. If you repeatedly spend money impulsively and wreck your budget, think about the immediate thrill or comfort those purchases give versus the delayed pain of the credit card bill. When that bill arrives, you swear to change. But weeks later, you're bored or sad, and the quickest fix is the buzz of buying something new. The environment plays a role too. Maybe ads targeted you, or your friends are all spending money, making it easier to justify. Our social environment also provides reinforcement. We often repeat certain behaviors because they receive positive feedback, or at least some attention from others. Perhaps you tend to play the clown and make jokes at inappropriate times. It might be a mistake because it derails serious discussions in your life. Why do you keep doing it? Maybe because your friends always laugh, and you've learned to equate making people laugh with being liked. That laughter is a reward that reinforces the habit, even if later you feel empty because you never address the serious topics. Similarly, someone might repeatedly self-deprecate or act helpless because it reliably gets others to offer support and reassurance. The social reward of care reinforces the behavior of putting themselves down. Our physical environment can be a trap as well. We underestimate how much cues around us trigger repeated mistakes. If every evening you sink into the couch in front of the TV and waste hours and you regret it every night, consider how your environment sets you up. The TV is right there, the couch is comfy, the remote at arm's reach. It's easy to fall into that pattern because your surroundings almost funnel you into it. Or let's say you struggle with overeating sweets. If your pantry and desk drawers are stocked with cookies and candy, you're creating an environment where making the mistake is effortless and temptation is constant. In that setup, even strong willpower would be tested daily.
So, what can we do to overcome the powerful pull of immediate rewards and environmental triggers? First, we need to bring some awareness to the transaction that's taking place. The moment you find yourself about to repeat a mistake, ask, what is the short-term reward I'm about to get? And what is the long-term cost I'm going to pay? Just that question can create a mental pause. For instance, if I stay up late watching videos, short-term reward, entertainment, relaxation, I will feel exhausted and behind tomorrow. Long-term cost. Is it worth it? Sometimes consciously reminding yourself of the future consequence tips the scales enough to choose differently. It's like telling your brain, hey, I know you want this now, but remember how bad it feels later. The more vividly you can recall or visualize the consequence, the more you counterbalance the siren song of instant gratification. Another strategy is to reduce exposure to triggers. Change your environment, even in small ways, to make it harder to do the wrong thing and easier to do the right thing. If your mistake is overeating snacks, don't keep a mountain of snacks in arm's reach. Remove some of those triggers from your home, or replace them with healthier options that you won't feel so bad about. If your mistake is getting into online arguments that ruin your mood and day repeatedly, maybe install an app that limits social media usage, or at least mute those discussions. If procrastination is your loop, create an environment for focus, a clean desk, notifications off, set a timer. In short, make the good path frictionless and the bad path a bit more difficult. It's a lot easier to avoid stepping into a trap if you don't walk right into where the trap is set. Also, consider who you surround yourself with. Our behavior can be contagious. If you're trying to quit a bad habit or foster a new one, it helps immensely to have people around who support that change, or even better, who embody the behavior you aspire to. If you hang out with people who are conscious about not repeating your particular mistake, their influence rubs off on you. Conversely, if your social circle continuously reinforces the mistake, for example, all your friends gamble and you're trying to stop, or they all stay out late when you're trying to be responsible, you may need to set some boundaries or seek out new influences who align with the direction you want to go. This doesn't mean abandoning old friends necessarily, but it could mean being honest with them. Hey, I'm trying to change this aspect of my life. I'd appreciate your support. Maybe we can do different activities together. Good friends will understand, and you might be surprised. Some may even join you in making positive changes. We can also harness the power of reinforcement in positive ways. If immediate gratification is causing repeated mistakes, try creating some immediate rewards for not making the mistake. For example, if you resist the urge to impulse buy something unnecessary, reward yourself by indulging in a treat that's not financially harmful. Maybe watch a favorite show or treat yourself to a nice dessert, assuming dessert isn't the habit you're trying to break. If you successfully go a week sticking to your new workout routine instead of being lazy as before, maybe buy yourself a small reward or celebrate by doing something fun. These positive reinforcements help train your brain to feel that doing the right thing has a payoff too, not just pain. Over time, your brain can start to associate good habits with good feelings, reducing the craving for the bad habits reward. Another helpful approach is learning to delay gratification. This is a skill that can be strengthened. Practice by intentionally postponing minor rewards. If you have an urge to check your phone while working, common mistake that breaks focus, tell yourself, I'll check it in 15 minutes after I finish this section. Often, the urge passes, or when you finally check it, you realize you didn't miss much. This builds your tolerance for not giving in right away. It's like a muscle. The more you exercise your ability to wait or to say no to an impulse, the stronger your self-control becomes.
Then, when the bigger temptations hit, you're better equipped to handle them without defaulting to the old mistake. In summary, many repeated mistakes persist because they're being rewarded in some way, or because the environment makes them the easiest option. To escape that, we have to be a bit like clever engineers of our own lives, redesign the environment, set up our own reward systems, and train ourselves to see through the allure of instant pleasure. It's not about willpower alone. It's about strategy. If you fell into a pit every time you walked a certain path, a smart move would be to either fill in the pit or choose a different path, not just attempt to jump the pit every day. Changing your surroundings and routines is like filling in the pit and paving a better road. When you do that, you'll find it takes much less effort to avoid repeating the old mistake, because you've removed the trap that kept catching you.
Reason 5. The blind spots. Lack of self-awareness. The final major reason we keep repeating the same mistakes is perhaps the most fundamental. We often lack self-awareness about our behaviors and their true causes. In simple terms, you can't fix what you don't realize is broken, or what you're misdiagnosing. Many people go through life on a kind of autopilot of the mind, not really reflecting on why things go wrong or why they do what they do. They might notice the outcomes, like, I failed again, or this always ends badly for me, but they don't see their own role clearly. This blind spot keeps them stuck because they either blame external factors every time, or they have no idea how to change since they haven't identified the real problem. Self-awareness is about having a clear-eyed view of your own thoughts, motives, feelings, and behaviors. It's like holding up a mirror not just to your appearance, but to your inner self and actions. Without that mirror, you operate in the dark, and you'll crash into the same furniture over and over, metaphorically speaking. You might have had the experience of someone pointing out a habit of yours that you never noticed, and it's like a light bulb moment. Wow, I do that, don't I? For example, maybe a friend says, you tend to shut down and not listen whenever someone gives you constructive criticism, and you realize that's true. And that habit has caused you to miss out on learning opportunities, hence repeating mistakes. Until someone or something made you aware, you couldn't improve it. Often our ego can cloud self-awareness. It's not fun to admit our faults or weaknesses, so sometimes we actively avoid looking at them. It's easier to say, "Ugh, I have bad luck," or "everyone else was wrong," than to say, "I made a mistake," or "I have a bad pattern." This ego protection, however, is a trap. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, wisely wrote, "If anyone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." The harm is in persistently clinging to ignorance. In other words, refusing to see the truth about our mistakes, persisting in ignorance, is what really hurts us. Only a strong person can put ego aside and say, "All right, let's see where I am the common denominator in these repeating problems."
One big blind spot is our cognitive biases, basically mental shortcuts or tendencies that skew our perception. For instance, confirmation bias makes us pay attention to information that confirms what we already believe and ignore what contradicts it. How does that cause repeated mistakes? Imagine you believe you're terrible at math, a belief since childhood. Due to confirmation bias, you might ignore evidence of times you did well and highlight every mistake, reinforcing your belief. So every time you approach a math-related task, you do so half-heartedly or anxiously, and indeed you perform poorly, a self-fulfilling prophecy. You prove yourself right by inadvertently sabotaging your efforts. If you're unaware of this bias, you'll just think, "See, I was right, I always fail," and continue the cycle. Another bias, the ego effect or self-serving bias, makes us attribute successes to our own qualities, but failures to external factors. That feels good to our pride in the short term, but it prevents learning. If every time something goes wrong you think, well, that was just because of them, or bad luck, not me, then you never examine what you could have done differently. So, developing self-awareness often starts with a dose of humility and curiosity about oneself. Instead of immediately judging yourself as either totally guilty or totally blameless, try to observe yourself objectively. Step outside your own perspective for a moment and watch your life like a neutral scientist or a compassionate friend. Ask, what patterns do I see? When things go wrong, what part did I consistently play in that? Is there something I keep doing or a mindset I keep holding that might contribute? This isn't about self-blame, it's about self-discovery. In fact, drop blame from the equation entirely. Blame, whether of yourself or others, usually clouds truth. Just focus on understanding.
To enhance self-awareness, you can use several techniques. Mindfulness and reflection. Take time regularly to sit with your thoughts. Replay recent events and honestly assess how you felt and behaved. Mindfulness meditation, even a few minutes a day, can strengthen your ability to notice your own reactions in real time. It trains you to pay attention to your thoughts and feelings without immediately reacting. Over time, you start catching yourself in the act, like, oh, I'm getting defensive right now, or I'm feeling the urge to lie to cover my mistake. And that awareness lets you choose a better response instead of the habitual mistake. Journaling. Writing about your day or your struggles can be like holding that mirror up to yourself. There's something about putting thoughts to paper that brings patterns to light. If you write each time you slip up or each time you feel proud, you might notice, when I'm around these people, I tend to act against my better judgment. Or, whenever I stay up past midnight, the next day I fall into procrastination. Journals can reveal cycles that are otherwise hard to see. They also help you process emotions that might be clouding your judgment. From your perspective, you might learn that, well, honestly, you tend to brush off advice, so you end up going in circles on your own. That might sting to hear, but if it's true, it's incredibly valuable to know so you can change it. Remember, as Aurelius said, the truth never harms, it only helps you grow.
It's also important to practice self-compassion as you grow your self-awareness. The goal is not to beat yourself up for your flaws, it's to illuminate them and improve. Think of how you'd want a teacher or mentor to correct you, with kindness and a focus on growth, right? Be that guide for yourself. Instead of, "Ugh, I always ruin things, I'm the worst," try, "I notice I have a tendency to ruin things in this specific way. Interesting. Now that I see it, what could I try instead next time?" This gentler approach keeps your morale up and your mind open to learning. Harsh self-criticism often just makes people give up or deny the problem. Compassionate honesty encourages progress. To summarize, lacking self-awareness is like driving with a foggy windshield. You're likely to hit the same bumps and potholes because you simply can't see them clearly. By clearing that windshield, through mindfulness, honest reflection, seeking feedback, you start to notice the roadblocks and detours in your life. Each insight into yourself is a victory because it removes one more invisible chain that was holding you in place. As you grow in self-awareness, you'll find that you stop making certain mistakes almost naturally because you catch yourself before falling. You'll also gain confidence because you'll understand why you used to stumble and how to avoid it. In essence, self-awareness transforms repeated mistakes from baffling curses into solvable puzzles, and you become adept at solving them.
Breaking the cycle, learning, and moving forward. We've explored a lot of reasons why we tend to repeat the same mistakes, from habit and comfort to emotional wounds, fear, instant gratification, and lack of insight. By now, you might recognize some of your own behaviors in these explanations. That recognition is a powerful first step. Understanding is liberating. When you shine light on the cause of a pattern, the pattern begins to lose its grip on you. So how do we take this understanding and translate it into real change? How do we finally break the cycle and stop the déjà vu of our missteps? The journey to breaking free can be summed up in a few key principles: awareness, strategy, and perseverance. We've already covered awareness in depth. Knowing the why is essential. Equally important is having a game plan, strategy, and the determination, perseverance to see it through, even if you stumble along the way. Embrace mistakes as lessons. Shift your mindset. Ironically, one big reason people keep repeating mistakes is the way they perceive mistakes in the first place. If you view a mistake as something purely negative or shameful, you're likely to either deny it or wallow in it, neither of which helps you learn. But if you start viewing mistakes as feedback or stepping stones, you create an environment in your mind where growth is possible. It may sound cliché, but it's true. Every mistake carries a lesson. The sooner you extract that lesson, the sooner you can move on to new mistakes, the kind you haven't made before, which means you're growing. So, when a mistake happens, and they will, no one suddenly becomes perfect. Practice a quick reflection. Okay, this happened. Why did it happen? What can I do differently next time? Aim to do this without self-judgment. Think of yourself as an experimenter, running tests, not a bad person failing. This attitude keeps you proactive and curious instead of defeated. It's much harder to break a cycle if you're beating yourself up. It's much easier if you're calmly analyzing and adjusting. Also, let go of the idea that you're the only one struggling. Everyone has their repeat mistakes. Some have obvious patterns, others have more subtle internal ones, but you are not alone in this human experience of taking a few tries to learn some life lessons. Knowing that can reduce the shame that sometimes fuels denial or avoidance. There's no need to waste energy on shame. Use that energy instead to make a plan. 2. Make a clear plan and commit to change. For each pattern you've identified, think of one concrete change or solution you want to implement. It's crucial to be specific. Don't just say, "I'll do better next time." How exactly will you do better? For instance, if lateness is your repeating mistake, a plan could be, "I will start using calendar alerts and always prep my bag the night before meetings." If losing your temper is the pattern, the plan might be, "When I feel anger rising, I'll excuse myself for 5 minutes to cool down." Write down your plan or say it out loud to yourself. Solidifying it helps transfer it from good intention to actual commitment. This plan is essentially your new strategy to replace the old habit or response. Remember the insights from earlier. If it's a habit loop, the strategy targets the trigger or routine. If it's an emotional pattern, the strategy might involve therapy or journaling to process feelings. If it's fear-based, the strategy may be gradual exposure and positive self-talk. If it's environment-based, the strategy is to change the cues around you. If it's awareness-based, the strategy might include daily mindfulness practice. Tailor the plan to the root cause. Often, a comprehensive approach touches on multiple aspects. For example, to stop procrastinating on studying, mistake, cramming last minute, and doing poorly, a comprehensive plan could be: set up a daily study routine, habit change, study with a friend who keeps me accountable, environment change, remind myself that fear of failure is making me avoid studying and address that in a journal, emotional awareness, and reward myself each week I stay on track, positive reinforcement. That might seem like a lot, but serious patterns sometimes need multi-pronged solutions, and you can implement them step by step.
3. Anticipate obstacles and prepare for relapse. Breaking a long-standing cycle isn't usually a clean, straight line. You will likely slip up along the way, and that's normal. What matters is how you respond to those slips. Many people abandon their efforts at the first relapse, thinking, "I've failed again, so what's the point?" This is often because they had an unrealistic expectation that once they decide to change, it'll be smooth sailing. Let's set a more realistic and kinder expectation. Relapse or occasional repeats are part of the process. Each time you slip is actually another chance to learn, refine your strategy, or strengthen your resolve. It helps to anticipate when you might be vulnerable. Are there certain times, places, or moods that tend to trigger the old behavior? If you know a stressful week at work is coming, acknowledge that I usually fall back into bad habits under stress. I need to be extra mindful and maybe use my stress outlets like exercise or venting to a friend so I don't revert. If you do end up repeating the mistake, resist the urge to throw your hands up in despair. Instead, use the same reflection technique. All right, I slipped. Why this time? What can I tweak? Maybe you realized you ignored your plan. Why? Perhaps the plan needs adjustment, or maybe you didn't account for a scenario. It's iterative. Think of it as adjusting your course rather than starting over from scratch each time. You're still heading in the right direction, you just hit a detour.
4. Seek support and accountability. Change can be hard to do all alone, especially when it involves breaking deep patterns. Don't hesitate to seek support. Share your goal to change with someone you trust. Just voicing it can reinforce your commitment. Plus, they can check in on you or gently remind you if they see you slipping. For example, if you told your friend, "I'm trying not to complain all the time because I realize it's driving people away," they might lovingly signal to you when you're ranting excessively. A little nudge that helps you catch yourself. Professional support, like a life coach or therapist, can also provide structure and encouragement. They not only help with self-awareness, as discussed, but also hold you accountable week to week. Even support groups or online forums for people dealing with similar issues can bolster you with tips and a sense of camaraderie. There's power in not feeling alone on the journey. Hearing how someone else overcame the same struggle can inspire you and offer practical ideas. 5. Change your self-talk and identity. One subtle but powerful aspect of breaking a cycle is changing how you talk to yourself about you. If you've been stuck in a loop, you might have labeled yourself in a defeating way, like, "I'm a procrastinator," or "I'm just an angry person," or "loser," "mess up," etc. Carrying these identities around practically guarantees you'll keep living them out. It's a psychological principle. We tend to act consistent with who we believe we are. So start shifting that narrative. Instead of "I'm a procrastinator," say, "I have had a habit of procrastinating, but I'm working on becoming more proactive." Instead of "I'm terrible at relationships," say, "I'm learning how to have healthier relationships." See yourself as a work in progress, not a lost cause. Embrace an identity as a learner, a resilient person, someone who can change. Positive affirmations or simply conscious rephrasing of your self-image can cement the progress you're making. When faced with a temptation to repeat a mistake, you can tell yourself, "I'm not that person anymore. I choose differently now." Even if it feels a bit aspirational at first, it signals to your brain that a new era has begun. Over time, as you back it up with actions, it becomes reality.
6. Be patient and celebrate small wins.
Breaking a long-standing cycle of mistakes is a significant achievement, and it can take time, often more time than we'd like. It's important to practice patience with yourself. Progress is often 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But those forward steps accumulate if you keep at it. Don't wait until you've completely eradicated a mistake to acknowledge your growth. Celebrate along the way. If you normally would have yelled 5 times in a week, and this week you only yelled twice, that's progress. Notice it, and maybe treat yourself to something enjoyable as a reward. If you usually blow your budget every month, and this month you made it to the end with some savings, give yourself a pat on the back, and maybe that fancy coffee or a day off, within reason. Positive reinforcement isn't just external. Giving yourself credit is hugely motivating. Also, notice the benefits of your changes as they come. Often they start small: a slightly better mood, a bit more self-respect, a compliment from someone who noticed your change, a problem avoided, a stress reduced. These are proof that you're on the right track. Savor them. Nothing keeps you going like success, however modest. It builds a sense of, hey, this is working. I'm truly changing my life here. 7. Know when to seek new paths. Sometimes breaking one cycle opens our eyes to other changes we want to make. That's good. It means you're growing rapidly. But be careful not to overwhelm yourself by trying to fix every aspect of your life overnight. Prioritize what's most impactful. However, there are times when a repeated mistake is strongly tied to an entire environment or relationship that is unhealthy. In such cases, the ultimate way to break the cycle might be a bigger change. For example, if you find you cannot stop a negative behavior because it's constantly triggered by an abusive relationship or a toxic workplace, you might decide that leaving that situation is necessary for your well-being. It's a courageous step, but sometimes the only way to stop hitting your head against the wall is to step away from the wall completely. This isn't always applicable, but it's worth mentioning. Know that you have the power to make big changes too, when needed. As you work on breaking your cycles, keep in mind the wisdom that every master was once a beginner. The people you see who seem to have it all together have their own stories of repeated mistakes and lessons learned. In fact, they likely became wise or successful because they learned from those mistakes, not because they never made any. You are on a similar hero's journey. Yes, hero, because confronting one's own patterns and changing one's destiny is nothing short of heroic in the grand story of life. Conclusion. From repetition to growth. Throughout this journey, we've uncovered why we often find ourselves caught in the same mistakes time after time. We saw how our brains favor the familiar path, how our unresolved past can echo into the present, how fear tethers us to what's comfortable, how quick fixes seduce us at the expense of our future, and how not seeing ourselves clearly keeps us circling in the same groove. These are powerful forces, but here's the encouraging truth. Now that you see them, they no longer rule you. Knowledge truly is power. You've shone a light on the puppet strings, the hidden traps, the internal biases, and that light gives you the freedom to choose a different path. Breaking free of repeated mistakes is not about becoming a perfect person who never errs. It's about becoming a learning person. Someone who might trip, but doesn't keep tripping on the exact same stone forever. It's about turning each stumble into a stepping stone. As the proverb wisely puts it, fall 7 times, stand up 8. Each time you stand up, you stand a bit taller, with more insight and strength than before. Eventually, you stop falling over that particular obstacle altogether, because you've grown bigger than it. You can now step over it, or navigate around it deftly. Remember the quote by Cicero: "Any man can make mistakes, but only an idiot persists in his error." This isn't meant to be harsh, but to remind us that making mistakes is human. It's persisting in them without learning that is truly foolish. By listening this far and reflecting on your own patterns, you've already proven that you are not in that foolish camp. You are willing to learn and change. You're showing the hallmark of wisdom, the willingness to adapt and improve oneself. That is something to be proud of, and it sets you apart from those who simply throw up their hands and surrender to an endless loop.
Change might not come overnight, but it will come with consistency. Every small change in habit, every instance of facing a fear, every moment of awareness, and every conscious choice to do things differently, they all add up. Over time, the loop weakens and a new, better pattern emerges. One day you'll find yourself in a situation that used to trigger your old mistake, and to your own surprise, you'll respond in a new way. Perhaps you'll pause and breathe instead of reacting with anger. Perhaps you'll walk away from the donut, or speak up for yourself, or stick to your plan, and that moment will feel triumphant. You'll realize you've changed step by step. Life has a way of testing us until we learn. If you feel like you've been getting the same test on repeat, take heart that you now have the tools to ace it. Be patient and persistent. If you slip, remember that it's part of the process, not the end of it. The only true failure would be to stop trying altogether, and you're far from that. Going forward, keep a compassionate perspective towards yourself. You are not your mistakes. You are the author of your story, and at any moment, you can write a plot twist. What happened before might influence you, but it does not imprison you. Every day is a chance to break an old pattern and start a fresh one. So the next time you catch yourself on the brink of a familiar mistake, take that as a cue, not to fall into despair, but to awaken. Smile even, recognizing, I know this crossroads, and then choose the other road this time, even if it's scary or new. That single different choice can make all the difference. Over time, those different choices create a different life, one not defined by yesterday's loops, but by tomorrow's possibilities. You have the power to change. The fact that you're seeking to understand and grow means you're already on the path to breaking free. Keep going. Turn the lessons you've learned into actions. Trust that you're capable of transformation, because you are. In the end, you'll find that the cycle of repeating mistakes was not a life sentence, but a chapter, one that taught you what you needed to progress to the next level of your journey. Close that chapter with gratitude for the lessons and step forward with confidence. The road ahead is open, and you're writing a new story now, one that doesn't keep tripping over the same old hurdles because you've learned how to leap. Embrace the growth, forgive yourself for the past, and move forward knowing that you are wiser and stronger for everything you've overcome. Your story is evolving, and you are in control.